All right, good morning. How's everybody? That's not a very lively welcome. Everybody doing good? Ready for a big day? Awesome. This is a tremendous event. So Mike, thank you for everything that you and the team have done to pull this together. It's been getting bigger every year, and we are super proud to be here. I want to talk about AI and how it gives you superpowers. But first, a little context. AI is the largest economic opportunity that any of us will ever see in our lives. McKinsey study earlier this year said $16 trillion will be added to GDP between now and 2030 because of AI. Think about that for a second. Even if they're off by an order of magnitude, $16 trillion. So it is the largest opportunity that any of us will ever see in our lifetimes. Despite that, adoption is actually still very low. So Gartner's study last year said enterprise adoption of AI is 4 to 5%. The more recent report says maybe it's closer to 8 to 10%. Again, regardless of the precision, we're on the order of 10% adoption for something that we all have to acknowledge is the greatest opportunity we'll ever see in our lifetimes. So the question is why? Why is adoption low despite this enormous opportunity? And that's what I want to share with you as we go through this. First, a story I want to share with you. There was an animator for a Walt Disney Company in the 1930s. His name was Ward Kimball. And he just joined Walt Disney. He was looking to get involved in something. And he got involved in Snow White, which obviously went on to become a major success for Walt Disney Company. He spends 280 days designing a scene for Snow White where the dwarves are cooking a meal for Snow White. And he is just so, he's got so much passion for this. 280 days, works every single detail. He finally gets a chance to meet Walt Disney to get feedback on this. And he walks in, sits down in front of Walt Disney, and Walt Disney says to him, he says, "This is an amazing piece of work." He said, "I absolutely love it." He's like, "It's a minute and a half, it's short, it's funny, it's engaging, but we're going to cut it." And Ward Kimball's just shocked. He's like, he gets all this praise, and then it gets cut. And the reason that Walt Disney wanted to cut it is he said, look, he said, "I love it, but it breaks up the whole flow of the movie." And so Ward Kimball spends 280 days on a minute and a half scene, and instantly it's cut, and none of us have ever seen it. But the interesting part of the story is what he says he learned from that. He said he learned that in order to pursue the great, sometimes you have to give up the good. And when he really sat back and thought about it, he's like, that was a really good scene. It wasn't a great scene. And he was willing to give that up, or he had no choice. But Walt Disney, it gives you an idea of the creative mind of Walt Disney, which is we're going to have to stop doing the good if we want to pursue the great. And that's a story that Stan Lee, the creator of Marvel, tells, which is he had way more good ideas than he had great ideas. So everything about the Marvel universe became about what's going to really distinguish itself and be great and stick out. And kind of sets the tone for how I think we should all think about AI in our organizations. AI does have the power to transform everything that we're doing in each of our organizations. And that's why I like to say AI is going to give you superpowers. It's going to make every employee more productive, more effective, give you the ability to do things that you couldn't do before. The question is how do we unleash that? And how do we do it with this mentality of we're going to have to stop the good if we want to pursue the great. And AI is truly about pursuing the great and doing something in your business that could not be done before. I've done a little homework on superheroes. Wasn't really my thing. I didn't know much about it. What I have learned about superheroes is every superhero has an origin story. It's kind of where they came from and who they are at their essence. Whether it was you were bitten by a spider, you were scarred in a chemical spill, you were subjected to medical tests, whatever it is, every superhero has the essence of who they are. And the superpower that they developed, it didn't actually make them a different person. It was about extenuating who they are, extenuating what they really are at their core. What were their core values inside? What defined who they were? And then the superhero phenomenon was about making them better, exaggerating what they could do. It is going to be the same way with AI. AI is not about changing who you are as a business. Common refrain, hey, AI is going to disrupt everything. We have to be in completely new businesses. I don't believe that. AI is about how do you extend the core values of who you are, and how do you do it in a way that drives better outcomes for your stakeholders, better way for you to operate as a business. I want to give you some examples of origins. We've got some great stories as we've worked with clients over the last few years. Royal Bank of Scotland is a great example. Let me share their origin story to give you an idea of how they attacked this. For Royal Bank of Scotland, their focus is customer service. How do we better serve customers? You can do that with AI. We worked with them on a project where we took everything they were doing from a customer service perspective, and we built that into a machine learning model. It's called intent classification, which is where we start to classify intent, customer intent, and what that means in terms of how you serve those customers. In a short period of time, less than a year, today, Royal Bank of Scotland is automating 40% of their inbound customer inquiries using AI. A human never has to touch it. It's all done in software. This is about extenuating who they are as a company. Didn't change them. It didn't say we're going to do new businesses. This was about extenuating their mission to provide great customer service. Now, what is the outcrop of this? They took those same customer service representatives and they moved them to focus on the hardest customer problems. They didn't replace them. They didn't say, hey, we've automated away your job. They said, we're going to automate the most basic tasks. We're going to move our customer service reps to the hardest tasks, the things that will probably never get done in AI. So at the same time, while they've automated 40%, they have now driven a 20% increase in customer satisfaction, Net Promoter Score, NPS. This is a great story of AI. AI is not about replacing jobs, although that's what you'll read in the media. It's about extenuating your core values, automating tasks, and then using your workforce to go solve the harder problems. It's a really good example, and this is a scenario or a use case that applies to every company in the world that has customers, and I think that's most companies. They normally don't last long if they don't. Next example, Wonderman Thompson. You may not know this name, Wonderman Thompson, but it's one of the agencies that's part of the WPP group. And their origin story is it's all about data. They collect massive amounts of data on consumer intent and how that informs how they work with the advertising, the clients that they have for advertising. They've got a database that gives them insight to 270 million people, customer intent, that they can use with their clients to make sure advertising hits the mark, customizing what they do. The challenge we had to attack with them is we're talking about 3 different massive data sets, data that is personalized but has to actually be de-anonymized so that you're not actually targeting individuals, you're just understanding segments or groups. And their big challenge was this was so manually intensive, meaning collecting that data, building models, putting them into production, They needed a way to automate. We have technology we built in IBM Research called Auto AI, which automates core functions like feature engineering, algorithm selection, how you build models and get them in production. And that's what we've done with WPP, Wonderman, Thompson. So again, their story, their origin story, is about starting with their core business, which was data collection, then working with advertisers, and using AI to drive a better experience for their advertisers. AI is accessible to everybody, but it is about how you get started. Now let's talk a little bit about what AI is, and then I'm going to come back to where I started, which is how do we collectively begin to drive more adoption. AI is not a magical black box. This is computer science. Nothing to be scared of, nothing to be worried about. It's not a magical black box. What is it? AI is really about three things. And I know while you read in the press about things like self-driving cars and robots and drones, all that stuff is interesting. But when you think about enterprise AI, what businesses can do with AI, it's really about three things. It's about predictions, it's about automation, and it's about optimization. That's it. So when you talk to a line of business team, or if you're part of the line of business team, this is not about some, future distant idea. This is about today, with the data we have and the models we can build, how do we make better predictions? Predictions are the lifeblood of any organization. How do we automate? Back to the case I shared with Royal Bank of Scotland. It was about automating some tasks so that workers could focus on the more difficult tasks. Then it's about optimization. How do you do things like optimize HR processes, optimize your supply chain? All of these things are accessible and available with AI technologies today. Number one question I get about Watson, I took over Watson about a year ago, is what is Watson? It is not a consumer device. And yeah, we had a few commercials that made it look like that. Watson is not a consumer device. Most of you, without knowing it, have interacted with Watson or even used Watson, whether it's as part of customer service, could be driving that interaction, providing a fan experience at sporting events, which we do a lot of, understanding what's going on in a vehicle. If you drive a Mercedes, you've probably used Watson without knowing it. Not a consumer device. Watson is about getting AI embedded in how all of us live our lives to have a richer experience. It's really three things. First of all, it's a set of tools for organizations that want to build their own AI. Our observation was we can't dictate what people should do with AI, what AI should be for everybody. So with Watson, we've created a set of tools. It's a toolbox. You can build models, you can deploy models, you can understand bias, take bias out of your models. It's a toolbox if you want to build your own AI. In the case of WPP, Wonderman, Thompson that I shared, that's what they did. They are builders. They took some different capabilities of Watson Studio, machine learning. They built their own AI to go attack this. Second thing Watson is its applications. So if you don't want to build your own AI, you're not a builder, you just want to consume AI, we've seen some common problems that we've been able to instantiate into a packaged application to make implementing AI very easy in your organization. Some examples of that are Watson Assistant. That's what automates customer service. That's what Royal Bank of Scotland is using from that example. We've got things like Watson Discovery for data discovery. If you've got data in a bunch of different clouds, Watson Discovery helps you understand, index all of your data assets. We've got things like planning analytics with Watson, which is financial planning. Next generation CFOs will start to automate things like planning and budgeting using AI. You can do that with planning analytics. We've got solutions for RegTech, if you're in banking, for knowing your customer, anti-money laundering, conduct surveillance. So it's applications. It's tools, it's applications, and then it's an embedded capability. Today, you can put Watson inside of any product or service that you have. It's all accessible via APIs. You can build it in to make your product better. Watson's three things. So now I want to get to the question I posed at the start. If AI is the largest opportunity ever, and we're at 10% adoption, I'll just round up, why is adoption so low? I think it comes down to three things. It comes down to data, comes down to skills, and trust. Data meaning, do I have the data I need? Do I understand the data? Skills meaning, do I have the skills to actually put AI into production in my organization? And trust is about, can I explain, trust the AI that I'm building and the models that are in production? So I'm going to decompose each of those. So first on data. Your AI is only as good as your data. They're two sides of the same coin. That's why I like to say data is really the lifeblood of your AI. 81% of businesses don't believe they have the data they need to be successful in AI, meaning that either they can't find the data, it's not in a usable form, it just can't be accessed. This came from an MIT study last year. So data is a fundamental inhibitor to achieving your ambitions with AI. I like to say there's no AI without IA, meaning information architecture. If you don't build an information architecture that makes your data ready for AI, you'll never be successful with AI. It's the classic garbage in, garbage out problem. Bad data that goes into building a model is going to lead to models that make bad predictions, that do a poor job of automation. You can imagine where that goes. We developed this concept that we call the AI ladder. Think of this as all the steps of sophistication that you need to think about to make your data ready for AI and then to get AI into production. From how you collect data, to how you organize your data, how you analyze data, visualize, begin building models. Then ultimately, how do you take the models that you've built and begin to infuse those into your business processes? So back to this idea of optimizing business processes for outcomes. We have a board of advisors in IBM, some of our biggest clients. I spent time with them just a couple weeks ago, and I asked them about this AI ladder. Where do you guys struggle as you think about this? The resounding view was the biggest struggle organizations face is still in data collection, data organization. Probably not a huge surprise to anybody in this room, but those are the foundational pieces that will determine how you can scale AI in your organization. Anybody can do a one-off project, but if you're thinking about how do I scale AI to every business unit, every country, every individual, you need to think about how am I going to scale this AI ladder. And this is a tool that all of you can use in your organizations just to get everybody thinking about where are we today, where are the gaps, and what do we have to focus on if we want to continue to make progress on this topic of AI. Because every organization is different. Some have done a lot on data collection, some have done a lot on data analysis, but to be successful in AI, ultimately it's going to be about you've been able to scale every rung of this ladder. Let's get to trust. Every organization that is putting AI into production has to be comfortable with the decisions that are being made. That means they understand data provenance, where the data came from, how that data was chosen in the first place to build the model. They can explain the outcomes. If you're in a regulated industry, it's about how do I explain it to a regulator? Even if you're not in a regulated industry per se, you're going to have to explain to yourself, to the organization, to your customers, to your stakeholders, this is how decisions are being made. Trust is fundamental to AI. It is about breaking open this notion of a black box. And I still think we're early on this topic because when an organization just has a few models in production or we're just at 10% adoption, this is important, but it's not urgent. As we get to a world where AI is scaling, which is not far off, this is going to become both urgent and important. We built a product called Watson OpenScale. OpenScale is about how do you manage the life cycle of your AI and ensure that you have trusted, understood models. Now, OpenScale works for any AI model. It's not about models built in Watson. It can be built by any open source models, R, Python, Jupyter, Scala, whatever you want to build models in. It can be models that are built by any third-party provider. OpenScale is about how do you manage the life cycle of all your models just by understanding what's happening in the model. The biggest challenge, and while I'd say the hot topic is things like bias and explainability, you could see that with some announcements in the last week where a company struggled with that. Possibly even the more important point is things that we would describe as model performance. When you get a model in production and you continue to feed it data, one of the biggest challenges actually becomes what we call model drift or anomaly detection. How do you understand how your model's changing over time and make adjustments if it's going down a path that wasn't originally intended? That's what we're doing with Watson OpenScale. To give you an example, just to even broaden the idea of what is bias, we did this at Wimbledon last year. The bias in Wimbledon is around video highlights, actually. What we realized was when people are looking at highlights, the unconscious bias in people's head is that the best highlights or the best plays are going to come from the best players. So they were just looking at, what is somebody ranked? Do I like that person? Do I know that person? And doesn't mean it was actually the best plays or the best highlights. So we applied bias detection against Wimbledon highlights. And what we realized was actually most of the great highlights or plays are not even from the best players. So that's an example of bias is not just about gender or race, which is a common, obviously, application, but it's also about what is the unconscious assumption that humans make based on data or based on their experience. All of that can be addressed with this. So the third piece is skills. So I talked about data, trust, now skills. The point on skills is simple. We have a supply and demand mismatch of epic proportions, meaning enormous demand for data scientists, supply not yet where it needs to be. Depending on which third party you believe, the gap in data scientists in the world is somewhere, in the 200,000 to 500,000 range. And any time in IT, when we face a supply-demand mismatch, there's really only two ways to address that. Well, there's three ways. One is training, obviously. We've got some great training that we've just put up on the web. All of it's free if you want to train yourself in AI. Second way is augmentation. So actually bringing skills. We built a team called Data Science Elite. These are the best data scientists in the world. We don't charge for this team. Their only mission is to help clients have a first successful AI project. This is the team that parachuted in to help WPP deliver the outcomes that I described. That was 5-week engagement. These are not long engagements. They're fast. That's why you make this investment. So it's about augmentation because success begets success. If we can help you have a first successful AI project, then we're confident that you'll have hundreds of others after that. The other way to solve this problem, so you can solve it through training, you can solve it through augmentation, you can also solve it through automation. And I alluded to this a bit before. We're building capabilities like Auto AI and IBM Research that automates 80% of what we ask a data scientist to do. Automating things like feature engineering, algorithm selection, automating catalog creation that actually informs a model in the first place. And when you do this, what we found is it has two impacts. One is we can make the good data scientist great data scientist. And that has a huge impact for organizations. Secondly, is we can make the great data scientist more productive. They can do twice as much. It comes back to this idea of superpowers. But it is enabling data scientists to do something they couldn't do before. So let's come back to the three things. My view, going back to where we started, is the reason we have this gap in the market between adoption relative to the opportunity is it comes down to data, trust, skills. All of these can be actioned today. So my challenge for you is to start to think about which one of these you want to take on. We announced Watson Anywhere earlier this year. The idea behind Watson Anywhere was Watson has to be wherever your data is. So it can run in your data center, can run in your private cloud, it can run on any public cloud, is deployed on Google, AWS, Azure, Ali Cloud, anywhere today, IBM Cloud. Watson Anywhere is about making the best AI accessible wherever your data is. Our focus in IBM is how do we connect this topic of AI to data. I talked about the Watson tools for how you prepare data, build models, put them into production. All of this is based on our hybrid multi-cloud data platform, which is Cloud Pak for Data, a way to connect all of your data environments across any cloud. So think of it as a single data fabric, regardless of where your data sets are, public or private, any public cloud provider. We have great partners like Cloudera, who you heard from before, which connects right into Cloud Pak for Data to make your Cloudera implementation more valuable. Partners like MongoDB. We've built a huge ecosystem of partners that are integrating into a single multi-cloud platform. This is part of our strategy with Red Hat. All of this is based on containers, runs on OpenShift. OpenShift is the enabler for these to run anywhere. Cloud Pak for Data is now certified on Red Hat OpenShift, so it runs wherever you want. So I'd like to close with a story. JP Morgan, famous banker, he's late in his career, and he's walking down the street in New York, and a guy walks up to him, and he says, "In this envelope, I hold the secret to business success, and I'm willing to sell it to you for $50,000. So JP Morgan was like, he's a pretty successful guy at that point. He's like, okay, I'm not going to do that. He's like, but how about this? He's like, I'm a man of my word. He said, if you'll let me read what's in the envelope, and if I agree that it is truly the secret to business success, then I'll write you a check for $50,000. Guy thinks about it. He says, okay. Hands him the envelope. JP Morgan opens the envelope, reads it, writes him a check for $50,000 on the spot. I don't know what was in the envelope, but I thought that was a good story. I'm kidding. I do. I do know what was in the envelope. This is a true story. So in the envelope, it says there are 2 secrets to business success. Number 1, every day, make a list of what has to be done. Make a list of what has to be done. Number 2, do them. Much easier said than done. But he's absolutely right. And so as you think about what you're going to go do on the topic of AI and data, look, you came to this conference for a reason. You're investing time, you're investing money, so it's important to you. What is that list that you're going to make when you leave here after these 2 days? And then how are you going to rally your organization to get those things done? Hopefully I've given you some tools to think about on that. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.